We wanted to do this documentary so people wouldn't have to always stare and take pictures, because we don't like when they take pictures, so they just knew who we are and stuff.
At first glance, their story looked like something rare but inspiring. Two conjoined twins navigating life together, sharing everything, even love. But behind the headlines, something felt off. When they revealed that one man chose to marry both of them, people didn't just react with curiosity. They started asking difficult questions. Was it love or something else entirely? As more details came out, the story took a darker turn, raising concerns about motives, boundaries, and a truth many weren't prepared to hear. Join us in this video as we reveal why the conjoined twins believe their husband married them because of his fetish. A love that was never what it seemed. Their lives changed the moment they met him. To them, he felt like something out of a dream. A man who didn't stare too long, didn't ask uncomfortable questions, and didn't treat them like a mystery to be solved. Instead, he saw them as individuals. He spoke to them with warmth, laughed with them, and made them feel like two regular women with their own hearts, their own dreams, and their own kind of happiness. For the first time, it felt real. It felt right. He became their Prince Charming. But sometimes, the things that look the most beautiful at first are the ones hiding the darkest truths underneath. At the beginning, everything moved quickly. There were sweet words, shared moments, and promises of a future filled with love and peace. He talked about forever in a way that made it hard not to believe him. And when he proposed, it felt like the natural next step in a story that had been unfolding perfectly. A fairy tale, finally within reach. Still, small things didn't quite sit right. There were moments, quick, almost forgettable, when his words felt a little off. Strange comments slipped through, wrapped in jokes or curiosity that didn't feel entirely innocent. At times, the way he looked at them lingered just a second too long, not with love, but with something harder to understand. It planted a quiet seed of doubt in their minds. But doubt is easy to ignore when you're in love. The excitement of the engagement overshadowed everything else. The wedding day arrived like a dream, full of smiles, celebration, and the promise of a new beginning. It was supposed to be the start of a beautiful life together, and for a moment, it truly felt like it was. Surrounded by joy, they stepped into marriage believing they had found someone who truly understood them. A new chapter had begun. But as the days passed, little cracks started to show. His smiles, once warm and comforting, began to feel strained at times, forced. There were moments when his expressions didn't match his words, when something behind his eyes felt distant. It wasn't obvious at first, just small shifts, subtle changes, but they were enough to create an uneasy feeling that slowly grew stronger. Still, the sisters held on. They wanted this to work. They believed in the life they had started together, and they refused to let doubt take that away from them too easily. They focused on the good moments, the laughter, the connection they thought they had built. They had faced challenges their entire lives. This, they believed, was just another hurdle they could overcome. But the truth doesn't stay hidden forever. After the marriage, reality began to settle in, and with it came a painful realization. The love they thought they had found wasn't what it seemed. A typical husband speaks of love in soft, poetic ways, about a smile that lights up a room, a laugh that brings comfort, a presence that feels like home. But for him, it wasn't those things that drew him in. It was something else entirely, something darker. His attraction wasn't rooted in love, but in fascination. A deep, unsettling curiosity about the fact that they were conjoined. What he had presented as acceptance and understanding was, in truth, something far more troubling, a hidden obsession, carefully disguised as affection. The promises of love had only been a cover for something he never openly admitted, and living with him made it impossible to ignore. Over time, his behavior became clearer. He seemed to enjoy attention, not just any attention, but the kind that came from shock and curiosity. He would bring them around others, almost as if he were showing them off, feeding off the reactions of strangers who couldn't help but stare. What was meant to be a sacred bond between partners slowly turned into something uncomfortable, something humiliating. A relationship that should have been private became a spectacle. It hurt, but it didn't break them. These were women who had faced a lifetime of challenges, judgment, whispers, and stares from the world around them. They had built strength long before he ever entered their lives, and they weren't about to let him define them now. Even in the middle of confusion and pain, they held on to who they were. And they weren't the only ones who noticed something was wrong. Friends and family began to see the change. The sisters who were once full of life and ease now seemed tense, quieter, and distant. Their smiles didn't come as easily. There was a weight on them that couldn't be fully hidden, no matter how hard they tried. The strain of their marriage was beginning to show, and those closest to them could feel it. Behind closed doors, things were even harder. The pressure, the emotional toll, the constant feeling that something wasn't right, it all built up over time. But even then, they stayed strong. To the outside world, they remained a source of inspiration, admired for their resilience and courage. At their core, they knew they would find a way through this. And then, one night, everything changed. A line was crossed, one that couldn't be ignored or excused. It was the moment that made everything clear, the moment that pushed them to finally seek help. Whatever hope they had been holding on to faded, replaced by the need to protect themselves. So they made a choice. They chose freedom. Leaving wasn't easy, but it was necessary. With support, they found their way out of a situation that had slowly been breaking them. For the first time in a long time, they could breathe again. Their story, their lives, were theirs once more. And as the truth began to surface, so did something else, understanding. The public, once curious, now looked at them with empathy. What had been hidden behind closed doors slowly came to light, and people began to see the reality of what they had endured. But instead of letting it define them, the sisters took control of their narrative. They turned pain into purpose. Using their voices, they began speaking out about deception, about misconduct, about the importance of seeing people for who they truly are. Their story shifted from one of quiet suffering to one of strength and empowerment. They didn't just survive, they reclaimed themselves. And in doing so, they reminded the world of something powerful, that their lives were never meant to be reduced to curiosity or spectacle. That, beyond everything, they were human. Two individuals with a deep desire to be seen, understood, and loved for who they truly are. As they moved forward, they continued to live, to laugh, and to inspire. They taught others not just through their words, but through their resilience. Betrayal and heartbreak had touched their lives, but it did not destroy them. If anything, it revealed just how strong they really were. Because in the end, this was never just a story about betrayal. It was a survival story, about reclaiming identity, and about the unbreakable bond between two sisters who refused to let the world, or anyone in it, decide their worth. Everything changed quickly, but what truly shaped Abby and Brittany's beginning? Keep watching to find out. Two bodies, one life. The beginning of Abby and Brittany. Long before love, heartbreak, and public attention, Abby and Brittany's story began in a quiet place called Carver County. They were born into a simple, hard-working family. Nothing out of the ordinary, at least at first glance. Their mother, Patty Hensel, worked as a registered nurse, while their father, Mike Hensel, spent his days building and shaping the world around him. Together, they created a home filled with care, structure, and love. But their daughters were anything but ordinary. From the very beginning, Abby and Brittany were physically connected in a way that would shape every part of their lives. They were born as conjoined twins, two heads, two minds, but sharing one body. Their condition made them unique in ways most people could barely imagine. But to their family, they were simply their children. They also weren't alone. Growing up, they had a younger brother and sister, which helped give their childhood a sense of normalcy. Life at home wasn't centered around what made them different. It was about family, routines, and growing up together. They were raised in New Germany, a small town where everyone seemed to know each other. It was here that they spent their early years, learning not just how to navigate the world, but how to navigate it together. Later, they attended Mayer Lutheran High School, where they continued to build their independence before eventually graduating from Bethel University in 2012. But what truly set them apart wasn't just where they grew up. It was how they lived inside their shared body. Physically, Abby and Brittany have one torso, but each controls one side. They share a chest that is slightly wider than average, along with 2 arms and 2 legs. At birth, they also had a small extra arm located between their necks, connected to a shoulder blade at the back. This arm was later removed, though the shoulder blade remained. Even their posture reflects their individuality. Abby's head tilts slightly outward to the right, while Brittany's tilts more noticeably to the left. This difference creates the illusion that Brittany is shorter, even when they are sitting side by side. In reality, Abby stands at about 5 feet 2 inches, while Brittany is closer to 4 feet 10 inches. Brittany's leg is also slightly shorter by nearly 2 inches, which affects how she stands and walks. Over time, she developed the habit of walking on her tiptoes, causing one of her calf muscles to grow more than the other. Their growth as children also came with medical challenges. At one point, Abby's spine continued to grow, while Brittany's stopped earlier than expected. To prevent complications, doctors had to surgically stop the growth of Abby's spine. Then, at the age of 12, they underwent another major procedure at Gillette Children's Specialty Healthcare. This surgery helped correct scoliosis and expand their chest cavity, ensuring they could breathe properly as they grew. Despite everything, their bodies function in a way that is both complex and remarkable. Each twin controls her own side completely. Abby manages the right, and Brittany controls the left. Their sense of touch is also divided, meaning each can only feel her respective half of the body. However, there is a slight overlap in the middle, where sensations can sometimes blur. Interestingly, when it comes to internal pain, like a stomachache, it may only be felt by one twin, even though they share the same organs. To live like this requires constant teamwork. Simple movements that most people never think about, walking, reaching, and balancing, require coordination and communication between them. But over time, they mastered it. Together, they learned to walk, run, and even swim with ease. They played sports like volleyball, learned to ride a bicycle, and even played the piano, each controlling different keys, yet creating one seamless sound. Their ability to adapt didn't stop there. They can type on a computer keyboard efficiently and even drive a car. As teenagers, they each had to pass their driving tests separately, even though they shared control behind the wheel. Abby handles everything on the right side, while Brittany manages the left. Together, they steer, accelerate, and brake as one. Of course, their physical differences sometimes make certain activities more challenging. Something as simple as balancing on a Segway can become difficult due to their difference in height and leg length. But challenges like these have never stopped them. They simply learn, adjust, and keep moving forward. That has always been the story of their lives. From the outside, people often focus on what makes them different. But for Abby and Brittany, life has never been about limitations. It has been about cooperation, resilience, and learning how to exist in a world that wasn't built for them, without ever letting that define who they are. Before the world ever knew their names, before love and betrayal entered their story, they had already overcome more than most people could imagine. And they did it the only way they knew how, together. A life together began, but what difficult choice came next? Stay tuned to find out. The choice that defined their lives. When Abby and Brittany were born, their parents were immediately faced with a decision no parent should ever have to make. Doctors presented Patty and Mike with an option: surgery to separate the twins. On the surface, it sounded like a chance at giving each child an independent life. But the reality was far more complicated. Medical professionals were honest with them. The risks were extremely high. In fact, there was little chance that both girls would survive the procedure. It wasn't just a medical decision, it was an emotional one. In a 2001 interview with Time magazine, their father, Mike, said something that captured the weight of that moment. How could you pick between the two? That single question held everything: the fear, the love, and the impossibility of the choice in front of them. For Patty and Mike, the answer became clear. They chose not to take the risk. Instead of gambling with their daughters' lives, they decided to let them live exactly as they were, together. It wasn't the easier path, but it was the one that gave both girls a chance to grow, to learn, and to experience life side by side. And that decision shaped everything that came after. Because Abby and Brittany never knew a different life, they didn't spend time wishing for one. From a young age, they adapted. What might seem impossible to others became normal to them. They learned how to move in sync, how to communicate without always speaking, and how to handle everyday tasks in their own unique way. Some things they could do independently. They can eat, write, and handle simple tasks on their own, each controlling her side with ease. But for anything that requires coordination, like walking, running, or using both hands, they have to work together. And over time, that cooperation became second nature. It wasn't forced. It was learned, practiced, and perfected through years of living as one. Their independence didn't stop them from reaching major milestones either. As teenagers, both Abby and Brittany earned their driver's licenses. Even though they share one body, the state of Minnesota required each of them to pass the driving test separately, and they did. It wasn't just a legal requirement, it was a reflection of who they are as individuals. Two minds, two decisions, one shared life. That balance between independence and unity has always defined them. They are not halves of a whole. They are two complete individuals who have learned how to exist in a way that requires constant teamwork. And it all goes back to that one decision their parents made at the very beginning, a decision rooted in love, a decision that gave them both a chance to live. That decision changed everything. But how did fame follow? Let's find out. Living in the spotlight, staying grounded. As Abby and Brittany grew older, it didn't take long for the world to notice them. Their lives, so different on the surface, carried a powerful message that drew attention from people everywhere. What fascinated many wasn't just their rare condition, it was how normal their lives seemed despite it. They weren't defined by limitations. Instead, they showed what was possible. Their ability to adapt, to live fully, and to move through the world with confidence made them stand out. Naturally, that kind of story captured public interest, and soon they found themselves stepping into the spotlight. In 2008, they appeared in a documentary titled Joined for Life. Abby and Brittany turned 16. It gave viewers a closer look at their everyday lives as teenagers, learning, growing, and doing the same things most teens do, just in their own unique way. It wasn't about shock or curiosity. It was about understanding who they really were. A few years later, their story reached an even wider audience. In 2012, Abby and Brittany aired on TLC. The reality show followed them at 22 years old, capturing important parts of their lives, attending university, spending time with friends, traveling, and simply enjoying their independence. Across 8 episodes, viewers got to see beyond the headlines and into their daily routines. What stood out most wasn't their condition, it was their mindset. From the very first episode, they addressed the curiosity that had followed them their entire lives. People have been curious about us since we were born, for obvious reasons, they shared. It was something they had come to accept, but it never shaped how they saw themselves. That perspective came from how they were raised. Their parents made sure they didn't grow up feeling limited or different in a negative way. Instead, they were taught to believe in their abilities, to push forward, and to never use their situation as an excuse to hold back. They carried that belief into adulthood. They said it best themselves. They were raised to think they could do anything they wanted, and they lived by those words every single day. Whether it was pursuing education, building friendships, or exploring the world, they approached life with the same confidence as anyone else. And maybe that's what made their story so powerful, because at the heart of it all, they didn't see themselves as extraordinary. They saw themselves as normal. The most amazing thing about us is we are like everyone else. It was a simple statement, but one that challenged the way people looked at them. Behind the curiosity and attention were 2 women who just wanted to live, grow, and be seen for who they truly were. They stayed grounded in fame. But what stirred new questions? Keep watching to find out. A marriage that sparked questions. In 2024, Abby made headlines once again, but this time, it wasn't because of her condition. It was because of love. News broke that she had married Josh Bowling, a nurse and former U.S. Army veteran. What surprised many people even more was the timing. The marriage hadn't just happened. It had taken place 3 years earlier, quietly and away from public attention. For a moment, it felt like a new chapter, something hopeful, something personal. As curiosity grew, Abby and Brittany began sharing small glimpses of that special day. On TikTok, they posted a recap video in 2024 that included moments from the wedding. One clip in particular stood out: the first dance. It was soft, intimate, and meaningful, giving people a rare look into a part of their lives they had chosen to keep private for so long. But with attention came noise. The internet reacted quickly, and not always kindly. Questions, opinions, and assumptions flooded in from all directions. Some people were curious, others were judgmental, and many crossed personal boundaries that should have been respected. The twins didn't stay silent. In late March, they responded in their own way. Posting another video, they wrote, "The internet is extra loud today." It was a simple statement, but it carried weight. It showed that they were aware of the conversations happening around them, and that they weren't going to let it shake them. Months later, they shared another message. "We know you think you know us." It was a reminder, a boundary, because no matter how much of their lives people had seen, there were still parts that belonged only to them. Behind the headlines and social media posts, real life continued. After the marriage, Abby stepped into a new role, becoming a stepmother to Josh Bowling's daughter from a previous relationship, Isabella Bowling. It was another layer to their already unique life, one that brought both responsibility and change. As for Brittany, her relationship status has remained private, and that too is a choice. For years, the world has watched them, questioned them, and tried to understand how their lives work. But as they've grown older, Abby and Brittany have become more intentional about what they share and what they keep for themselves, because not everything needs to be explained. Some things, like love, family, and personal decisions, are meant to be lived, not debated. A marriage raised questions, but who is the man involved? Let's find out more. The man behind the marriage. Before he became part of Abby and Brittany's story, Josh Bowling had already lived a life shaped by intense experiences. Born in Tennessee, he went on to serve in the U.S. Army as a healthcare specialist, more commonly known as a combat medic. It was a role that placed him in the middle of some of the most difficult and dangerous situations imaginable. During his time in the military, he was deployed with the 1st Cavalry Division to both Iraq and Afghanistan. There, he was responsible for treating injured soldiers, often in life-or-death conditions. It was work that demanded strength, quick thinking, and emotional endurance. But those experiences came at a cost. In a 2021 interview with the Minnesota Star-Tribune, Bowling opened up about what he had seen during his service. "I dealt with a lot of death and dying. The bad version of it," he said. It's the kind of statement that hints at the weight he carried long after leaving the battlefield. After his military service, he chose a different path, one that still involved care, but in a more peaceful setting. He became a registered nurse in Minnesota, focusing on hospice care, where the goal is not to save lives, but to make the end of life as comfortable and dignified as possible. For him, it wasn't just a job, it felt personal. He described hospice care as something that felt like a calling. After witnessing so much pain and loss in war, he was drawn to the idea of offering people a calmer, more compassionate end. "If there's the ability to give someone a peaceful death, rather than what I was accustomed to, I was interested in that," he explained. It was a shift from chaos to calm, from urgency to comfort. Somewhere along that journey, his path crossed with Abby's. The two quietly got married in 2021, in a small, private ceremony attended only by close family and friends. There were no headlines, no public announcements, just a moment shared among those closest to them. It wasn't until March 2024 that the marriage became public, surprising many who had followed Abby and Brittany's lives for years. But this wasn't his first marriage. Before Abby, Bowling had been married to Annika Bowling, the The two tied the knot in 2010 and spent 9 years together before separating in 2019. During that time, they welcomed a daughter, Isabella Bowling, who was born in 2016. Like many relationships, theirs came to an end, but parts of that past continued to surface later on. In October 2023, Annika filed a paternity suit involving Bowling and another man, Gavin Vatnsdal. The case centered around her second daughter, who was born in 2020 after her divorce from Bowling. In earlier divorce documents from 2022, the child had been referred to as Isabella's half-sister and noted as a non-joint minor child, meaning she was not officially recognized as a child of the former couple at that time. The legal filing requested that both men undergo DNA testing to determine paternity. By March 2024, a genetic test report had been added to the case file according to court records. However, the details of the test and its results have not been made public. Much of the situation remains private, known only to those directly involved. All of this adds layers to the story. On the surface, Bowling's life reflects service, care, and commitment, first in the military, then in healthcare. But like many people, his personal life carries complexities that don't always fit into a simple narrative. And as his story became connected to Abby and Brittany's, those complexities became part of a much larger conversation, one that continues to unfold. A complex past came forward, but what rumors spread next? Stay tuned to find out. The baby speculation that took over the internet. In August 2025, public attention around Abby Hensel and Josh Bowling reached a new level when TMZ paparazzi captured a moment that quickly went viral. The images showed the Hensel sisters placing a car seat with a baby inside into the back of a black Tesla. It was a simple scene, but it immediately sparked a wave of speculation online. Within hours, social media was filled with questions. People began to wonder whether Abby Hensel and Bowling had quietly welcomed a child into their family. The discussion grew even louder when a TikTok account, long believed to be associated with the sisters, reposted the paparazzi images. The caption read, "Blessed." That single word fueled even more assumptions, with many followers interpreting it as confirmation of a new baby. However, no official statement was made. Neither Abby nor Bowling confirmed or denied the rumors about becoming parents. The silence only added to the curiosity, as online conversations continued to grow around the possibility. Some viewed it as a private family matter that should not be discussed publicly, while others continued to search for answers. In September 2025, Bowling addressed the situation during an interview with People. He acknowledged the intense public interest surrounding their lives, especially given Abby and Brittany's long-standing fame. However, he made it clear that he would not be discussing whether or not they had welcomed a child. Despite the attention, he remained firm in keeping that part of their life private. Bowling also reflected on how different their reality is compared to most people's lives. While he may not have experience being part of a TLC reality series like Abby and Brittany, he has still had to adjust to the constant public scrutiny that comes with being connected to well-known figures. And once again, their story highlighted the same tension that has followed them for years, the space between public curiosity and private life. What are your thoughts about Abby and Brittany's new revelation? Let us know in the comments section below. In the end, this isn't just about a marriage or the headlines around it. It's about two real people trying to live their lives while the world watches, assumes, and talks. Abby and Brittany have always lived under public curiosity, but behind that attention are two individuals who simply want respect, privacy, and the freedom to define their own story. Maybe the real takeaway isn't what people think they know, but how much they don't. If you enjoyed this, like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more real-life stories.